You know, the largemouth bass lays millions of eggs, and many of her eggs will be eaten by the male that fertilized them. Most of her eggs will be eaten by brim and other small fish. Of those who do hatch, most of those tiny fish will be eaten by minnows and brim. As they mature to minnow size, most of those will be eaten by adult bass. Only a tiny fraction of the eggs originally laid will become mature bass. She has to lay millions of eggs in order to get a few mature fish. Question: is this how God works? Is this your idea of God? That in order to bring sons into His kingdom, God has to put billions of us on this earth and allow for wastage. 80% of human waste. Is this how God works? Now, what does that say about God? Well, it says a lot about God. Is your God a God that would waste billions of real people to achieve His objective of a few sons in His kingdom? And what makes matters worse is all those billions of people who were not saved, according to mainstream, are going to be tormented in a lake of fire forever. Yeah, that's what makes matters worse. You know, here it is. I mean, think about this. We human beings, we suffer, we hope, we love, we create. And for what? For what? Are you just another vain experiment where God is desperately trying to achieve His objective of a few sons in His kingdom? Are you no more value than a fish egg? 1 Timothy 2 and verse 3 says this: "For this is good and acceptable in the sight of God, our Savior, who will have all men to be saved and to come unto the knowledge of the truth." God wastes nothing. Have you ever known of anybody whose life was a total waste? Or so it seemed. In other words, it was like, maybe it's a family member, a loved one, someone you knew. Maybe they died an untimely death. And yes, there were sins, there were mistakes, there were bad choices, and the guy just, or the girl, you know, it's just like their whole life was a waste. It was a waste. I'm telling you, God doesn't waste anything. God doesn't waste anything. God wastes nothing. And that is the good news that I'm trying to share with you, if your mind will receive it, if you're big enough to receive it and understand what I'm trying to tell you. Now, I'm going to offer you a book at the end of this program that will explain everything that I'm talking about here today in a lot better detail than I can explain it right now. I only got 30 minutes to explain it, or less than that. But what I'm saying is, I'm trying to tell you that God doesn't waste anything. You know, there came a day when Jesus fed 5,000 people. You know, they came in and said, look, you know, have the people sit down. We're going to feed all these people. It's 5,000 people. And they said, well, look, we have but 5 loaves and 2 fishes here. How are we going to feed all these people? And by a divine miracle, Jesus was able to feed 5,000 people. But afterwards, afterwards, Jesus told His disciples, He said, now I want you to go out there and gather up all the baskets of fragments left. And there were 12 baskets of fragments left over. I've always been touched by that story because it sort of reveals that God doesn't waste anything. How will God save all those wasted eggs, as the example of the largemouth bass that I talked about? People who have died in unbelief. Yes, people who have died in their sins. Yes, people that were not saved. How will God save those people? People whose life seemed to be a total waste, just thrown away. You ever met people like that? They just throw their life away, their entire life, and then they end up getting killed in an automobile accident or something like that, or a drug overdose or something like that, you know. And it just seemed like, by all intent and purposes, that their whole life was a waste. They just threw it, they deliberately threw it away.